I will never forget the shock of running into my husband at a friend's baby shower. It seemed that Jessica was unaware that Kyle and I were married. But to think that Kyle and Jessica had even had a child together. I'm envious of how happy you two seem. Ah, I'm the only one left out of our close-knit trio. Jessica, Kyle, I hope you'll always be happy, no matter what. Jessica nods with a beaming smile, and Kyle nods awkwardly. I know the truth. I know that Kyle is the kind of man who would say, pregnancy isn't an illness. So don't be lazy, and that he offers no help to his pregnant wife. I can't believe he would cheat on me, and with our best friend of all people. It's an unforgivable act. I've decided to make Kyle lose everything. My name is Ashley, and I'm a beautician in a regional city. It's the place where I was born and raised. Not as flashy as the city center, but a comfortable place to live with a good sense of community. Kyle and I were high school classmates. Kyle and I were the recognized couple of our class. Whenever someone asked, "Where is Kyle now?" I always knew the answer, which led to teasing about me being a good future wife. Jessica, another of our trio, was always listening to UK music or the radio on her earphones, dreaming of going abroad. She was one of the top students in our class. She went on to study at a university abroad, and after graduating, we only exchanged emails a few times a year. After graduation, I went to vocational school to become a beautician. Since my family owns a beauty salon, I started working there. Kyle attended a local university and then joined the family business, a company selling beauty products like shampoo. This company was a business partner of my family's salon, which also contributed to the rumors about our relationship. Kyle was quiet and not much of a talker, the opposite of me, but somehow we got along well. Our relationship continued from high school, and we naturally ended up getting married without a formal proposal. We bought a spacious house in the city and started our new life. Soon after, I became pregnant. I was overjoyed to be carrying the child of the man I loved, and that night I happily told him, "Kyle, guess what? I'm pregnant." I awaited Kyle's happy reaction, but his response was indifferent. "Oh, is that so? Aren't you happy?" Kyle remained silent, fiddling with his phone, searching for the due date and birth stories. "The baby will be born next year. Make sure to wrap up your work by then." Is that all? What else is there to say? There isn't, but I was honestly disappointed with his attitude. But soon, I faced a situation that didn't allow me to dwell on it. My first pregnancy was tougher than I imagined. I had been working full-time, but sudden health issues and doctor's visits made it difficult to continue. Reluctantly, I took maternity leave earlier than usual to focus on my health. However, Kyle was unsympathetic. He searched the standard maternity leave period on his phone and confronted me with it. Legally, maternity leave starts 6 weeks before birth. Aren't you taking time off too early? My job is physically demanding, and everyone's health situation is different. Besides, my mom told me to leave the work to her. Pregnancy isn't an illness, so don't pamper yourself. If you're like this, I can only imagine what our child will be like. Even though it's his own child, Kyle could say such things without hesitation. If it's my child, it has to be excellent. You need to make an effort too. If you turn into a lazy housewife, I'll divorce you immediately. Haven't you been slacking on the housework lately? The meals are sloppy, and the house is dirty. I can't manage everything right now. I have limited food options because of my pregnancy. Could you at least make your own meals? However, Kyle relied entirely on me for housework. I had been used to doing household chores from a young age because my family ran a business. But it seemed that Kyle, whose mother was diligent at home, had grown up without doing any housework. "Men in our family don't do housework," my mother-in-law would often say, as if that was solely a woman's role. While I appreciate my mother-in-law's dedication to housework, it resulted in Kyle, even after marriage, not knowing the first thing about doing laundry. This was a secret frustration of mine. While I was contemplating how to talk to Kyle about this, I suddenly needed to use the bathroom. Those who have been pregnant might understand, but at that time, I needed to go to the bathroom frequently. "Sorry, I need to use the bathroom." Again? Are you getting old or what? When you're pregnant, you need to use the bathroom more often. That's disgraceful. You're always complaining about your health lately. It's like living with an old lady. This started a long litany of complaints from Kyle. But I desperately needed to use the bathroom. His habit of treating me like an elderly person for various reasons was also unpleasant. And I wanted to leave the scene quickly. When Kyle paused to take a breath, I tried saying, "I'm going to the bathroom," but he snapped, "I'm not done talking yet." Somehow, enduring his long talk, I barely made it to the bathroom in time. From behind, I could hear Kyle's mocking comment, "That's so uncool." When we got married, I found Kyle's calm and unflappable nature attractive. But since I got pregnant, it feels like everything he does is backfiring. Instead of supporting me, he's busy comparing me with various cases he reads about on the internet. That celebrity returned to work immediately after giving birth and looked perfect. You'll be the same, right? I don't know. Don't compare me so easily to such incredible people. You're both human, just try it. Don't disappoint me too much. Apparently, Kyle's expectations are incredibly high. Moreover, he easily believes dubious information from the internet. Our conversations often turn into unpleasant arguments because of this. Around the same time I got pregnant, Kyle started spending less time at home. Part of the reason was the arguments like the ones I just mentioned. But he also began going out at night and on weekends, claiming it was for work. This behavior was new and unlike our life before. It was the complete opposite of the involved fathers often talked about nowadays. One night, when Kyle came home late, I decided to ask him, "You've been busy with work recently, haven't you?" "I'm trying to attract new clients." "It's none of your business." "But Kyle, have you been drinking?" "This is part of my job, too." "Stop nagging." Kyle said this so loudly that the neighbors could probably hear. I could smell alcohol on his breath. "You never had to drink for work before." "What happened?" "You wouldn't understand." "Basically, you are." This led to another round of Kyle's sarcastic remarks. "I work hard every day, and all you do is laze around at home. This doesn't make working worthwhile." "I'm not just lazing around. I'm quite busy preparing for the birth." That's no excuse to neglect housework. "You hardly put on makeup anymore. And it's like you're giving up on being a woman just because you're pregnant." That's awful. Holding back tears that threatened to spill, I went to put Kyle's bag back on the shelf when a small object fell to the floor with a clink. "What's this?" "Wireless earbuds." I picked them up casually and looked at them closely. They were small earbuds, shaped like earrings, in a cute pink color that seemed to appeal to women. "Don't you dare touch my bag without permission. That's an invasion of privacy. It's not unusual for me to do this." "But Kyle, you don't usually use earbuds, do you? If they're someone else's, we should probably return them. That's for me to worry about. Just focus on your housework. Why can't you even get that right?" Kyle's reaction was excessively intense, just for pointing out a lost item. As I tried to say more, I felt a dull impact on my stomach. Kyle had kicked me. Don't forget that you're being supported by me. If you keep interfering, I'll have to reconsider things. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened to me. After Kyle stormed off to his room, I sat on the floor, stunned, replaying the recent events in my mind. It didn't seem like I had done anything to deserve being kicked. Kyle's reaction was incomprehensible to me. The next day, just to be safe, I went to the hospital to check on my stomach. I couldn't bring myself to say that my husband had kicked me, so I lied that I had fallen at home. Fortunately, the baby was fine, but the area where I had been kicked was bruised and reddened. Amidst this, some good news arrived. My best friend Jessica had given birth. I had heard she went to study abroad and got a job there, but apparently, she had returned to the US. I would have liked to bring Kyle with me for a reunion of our close trio, but he was away on a business trip. Reluctantly, I went to congratulate her alone. In her bright, sunlit hospital room, Jessica lay on the bed with a relieved expression. As I entered, she managed to sit up slightly. It's been so long. Congratulations on the birth. Thank you. I actually came back to the US about a year ago but couldn't contact you. I'm sorry. I'm just glad the baby was born safely. Jessica looked more polished and mature than when she was a student. The same earbuds I found in Kyle's belongings were lying beside her pillow. She seemed to notice my gaze. Oh, these? They're my favorite. I lost one the other day, but my boyfriend found it for me. Really? What's your husband like? We haven't registered our marriage yet. Actually, he is. Her words were interrupted by a knock. To my surprise, Kyle entered the room. I was so shocked I couldn't say anything. Surprised, right? I'm currently dating Kyle. Jessica seemed unaware that Kyle and I were married. She was innocently smiling in front of me. Hey, welcome. Long time no see. Kyle's nonchalant attitude heightened my confusion. It's a reunion of our close trio. I started seeing Kyle again after returning to the US. We're planning to get married, but we've been busy with the paperwork. I see. Actually, as you can see, I'm pregnant too. I was overwhelmed with the urge to spill everything. But I calmed down a bit. I have a baby in my stomach. I must protect this child and myself. I pondered the most effective way to handle this crisis. Ultimately, I decided to keep the situation calm for now. My husband is away on business now. I really wanted to bring him today, but I couldn't. That's a shame. I wanted to meet Ashley's husband. It really is a pity. But having a husband like yours who accompanies you is definitely better. My husband hardly helps at all. I glared at Kyle secretly. Kyle deliberately looked away. You two look so happy together. Ah, I'm the only one left out of our close-knit trio. Jessica, Kyle, I hope you'll always be happy, no matter what. Jessica nods with a beaming smile, while Kyle nods awkwardly. Oh, this is for the baby shower. I heard bibs are always useful, so I bought some. I even got matching ones for my baby. They're cute, thank you. You must be excited for your baby too, Ashley. Yes, once I have a healthy baby, we should all go out together. At the word all, Kyle's shoulders twitched. I pretended not to notice and smiled brightly. By the way, can we take a photo? Jessica, hold the baby. Jessica held the baby, and Kyle stood next to her for the photo. I forced a smile and left the hospital room. Before I knew it, my breathing became rough and my shoulders heaved. From beyond the door, I could hear Jessica's excited voice and Kyle's low responses. After leaving the hospital, I rushed home. I opened my phone and first contacted a real estate agent. Hello, I know this is sudden, but I want to sell my house. Yes, you can list it right away. I'll complete the paperwork quickly. Also, could you recommend a moving company? I arranged to sell the house and contracted a moving company through the real estate agent's connections. Next, I called Kyle's parents. Mother? Due to an urgent situation with Kyle, I'm sending some belongings your way. There will be a lot, so please don't be surprised. Yes, I had decided to erase the very existence of the house we had lived in. Kyle said he would be on a business trip until tomorrow. He probably planned to stay somewhere tonight. Although I wanted to send his belongings directly to his parents' house, I didn't want to shock my mother-in-law. So, I at least informed her. After finishing those arrangements, I received a call from Kyle. In fact, he had been calling non-stop since I left the hospital. I ignored them and calmly drank water. Then a message came in. Let's talk things over, just the two of us. But what was there to discuss in this state? Moreover, after being kicked in the stomach, I had become wary of Kyle. That wariness had now turned into distrust, and I didn't even want to hear his voice. When I got home, I started packing immediately. I went into Kyle's room and began stuffing his belongings into boxes. Fortunately, it was the off-season for moving. I was able to sign up for a plan where the movers would help pack. And the shipping went smoother than expected. All that was left was to send my belongings. My parents came over as soon as I contacted them, and the move was completed immediately. I found something in Kyle's room. An incomplete divorce form. It seemed Kyle intended to leave me for Jessica. Thinking it was an opportunity, I filled in the remaining sections of the divorce form and decided to keep it safe. Just then, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Ashley, I knew some belongings were coming, but I didn't expect so many. What happened? Actually, Kyle has been having an affair. Do you remember Jessica from high school? It seems he had a child with her. I could sense my mother-in-law collapsing on the other end of the phone. While I felt sorry for her, I continued speaking. Unfortunately, I have evidence. I'll send you the photo. I sent the photo I had taken in the hospital room, showing Jessica with the baby and Kyle standing next to them. I don't want to believe it, but it's true. I don't want to believe it either. But it's the truth. I'm going to stay at my parents' house starting tonight. My mother-in-law apparently tried to contact him afterward, but seemed troubled when she couldn't reach him. When she asked me if I knew where he was, I blurted out that he's no longer family to me. Seeing my reaction, my mother-in-law seemed to understand my decision. That night, I took my belongings and returned to my childhood home, sleeping peacefully in my old room. The next morning, I got a message from Kyle. Hey. The house is empty and there's a for sale sign up. What's going on? Don't you understand? Your home isn't there anymore. For now, I've sent your things to your parents' house. I'm changing the locks tomorrow, so coming back will be pointless. What have you done? Let's talk, at least. I suppose we must. I'll come to your parents' house this afternoon. I'll contact your mother myself. I quickly ended the call and started preparing to go out. That afternoon, all the relevant parties gathered at Kyle's parents' house. It was Kyle's parents, my parents, Kyle, and me. My mother-in-law looked particularly pale. She bravely started the conversation. Kyle, is it true that you're having an affair with your friend Jessica? An affair? No, Mom. We just started dating late, that's all. I'm not interested in excuses. And there's a child involved, too? It seems we're quite compatible. The next moment, My mother-in-law punched him. How could you do this? Ashley is pregnant with your child. How can you face her? It was the first time I'd seen Kyle's usually calm and sophisticated mother act like this. A trickle of blood ran from Kyle's nose, but he seemed unaware. Wow, what was that for? It's natural for a child to be born to a couple in love. How can you say such a thing? I intervened in the argument. First of all, why did you even start dating Jessica? I ran into her at the station while I was out on sales calls. She had just returned to the US and was busy with her new job. She had a charm that you don't have. That doesn't sound like a reason to start dating. I've actually liked Jessica since high school. But I thought she was out of my league, so I settled for you. I was speechless at his selfish reasoning. When I met Jessica again and we talked about the past, I realized she didn't think badly of me. There was no reason not to be together. Kyle had kept his marriage to me a secret from Jessica. He had considered divorcing me when Jessica got pregnant. But around the same time, I became pregnant, too. Kyle didn't have the courage to divorce or the resolve to remarry, so things continued as they were. How can you be so selfish? Aren't you ashamed of juggling two women? Jessica and Ashley are completely different. Meeting Jessica again made me realize how unsatisfied I was with Ashley. I plan to remarry Jessica and step up as a man. Don't joke. I'm ashamed to call someone like you my son. Her anger knew no bounds. If that's how you feel, we'll sever our parent-child relationship. You're fired from the company, too. From now on, live on your own. I don't care. But I wondered. Kyle had always worked in our small family business. Would he be able to handle a different job? You don't understand anything. The only reason you could work until now was thanks to Ashley's beauty salon. What? Ashley's salon? That small country shop didn't have much to do with my performance. The only reason you managed to get any results was because Ashley's salon was promoting our products. You ungrateful person. My parents, who had been silently listening to the conversation until now, declared regretfully that they would stop doing business with Kyle's company. It can't be helped. I'll start a new business. I'm still young, and if I study, I can do anything. Jessica will return to work soon after giving birth, so our new life will be secure. I muttered into my smartphone, so he says. Suddenly, Jessica's voice loudly exclaimed, "Are you stupid?" over the speaker. I had been connected to Jessica via video call from the beginning of the meeting. If I had known you were married to Ashley, I would never have dated you. I can't believe I ended up betraying Ashley too. Your lack of foresight in this conversation is astonishing. Frankly, you have no talent as a business person. Why is Jessica? I got in touch with Ashley and decided to join the discussion. I'm glad I listened in. I never want to see you again. Wait, don't leave me. Why should I stay with someone as awful as you? I'll raise the baby on my own. Oh, but I'll be taking child support. Faced with Jessica's firm tone, Kyle seemed to realize there was no convincing her. He suddenly turned to me, begging. Ashley, I was wrong. Forget everything and let's raise our child together. I refuse to continue a marriage with such a scoundrel. I can't forget the terrible things you've done. I remembered the shock of seeing Kyle in Jessica's hospital room. Don't be so stubborn. Aren't you supposed to be the kind one? Kyle looked at me desperately, his face still stained with dried blood, a pitiful sight. I shook my head slowly. It's too convenient for you to come back to me just because things didn't work out with Jessica. But you'll have trouble raising the child on your own, won't you? I have a profession. and a father like you is more of a hindrance than a help. I'm not foolish enough to cling to a useless man. I had already discussed everything with my parents, and they were fully supportive. Having connections through their business, they even knew a good law firm. I presented the divorce papers I had found in Kyle's drawer. As you can see, I've prepared the divorce papers. All that's left is to submit them. Let's quickly settle the property division and child support. Wait, I have to pay Jessica and now you too. Of course. I'm still your wife, after all. But don't think you can neglect Jessica either. We have lawyers ready. Kyle buried his face in his hands. Then, I suddenly felt an unfamiliar pain in my abdomen. Ow, it hurts. At that moment, I realized I was going into labor. The meeting was obviously adjourned, and my parents rushed me to the hospital. Everything happened so quickly. Exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the meeting and the childbirth, I collapsed into bed and slept. Even when the nurses woke me up, I was hardly aware. After being discharged, I returned to my parents' house with my baby. My mother, a beautician, discreetly spread the word about Kyle's actions among her clients. With a client base primarily of housewives, her few words quickly spread throughout the town. Meanwhile, Kyle attempted to start an online sales company. Underestimating the power of personal connections and relying on the internet. However, his abilities fell short compared to the strength of word of mouth. Unable to find a bank for funding due to the rumors, his business failed to launch. Another blow to Kyle was the video call with Jessica. She had recorded the entire conversation using another camera, edited Kyle's self-centered behavior into a short video, and spread it among our high school classmates. As a result, Kyle lost all his friends and any potential support. Left to fend for himself, Kyle was kicked out of his parents' house and resorted to living in an internet cafe while depleting his savings to find a new home and job. Struggling to find work and housing as an unemployed man with no fixed address, he eventually moved to a distant area. Kyle managed to find a day labor job, struggling with unfamiliar physical work. But there was no mercy for him. I warned him that if he missed even one child support payment, I would sue him for assaulting me while pregnant. The photos I took of my injuries and the medical records from my hospital visit would be substantial evidence. I submitted the divorce papers, becoming a single mother almost simultaneously with giving birth. But I was not alone. I found a larger apartment and decided to live with Jessica. The four of us, Jessica, me, and our babies, started a new life together. The children get along like siblings. Jessica and I, always best friends, grew closer with Kyle out of the picture. We support each other with childcare, making work and personal time manageable. We're planning to make our park debut together when the kids are a bit bigger. For now, we're enjoying this comfortable life.
Thanks to you, I'm marrying Rich. As a thank you, I'll give you as much alimony as you want. My sister said this to me with a triumphant look. It was shocking enough to be betrayed by my husband, but to discover that his mistress was my own sister was unimaginable. Since we were kids, she always took things from me. Whether it was snacks, toys, or even my favorite stuffed animal, she would take them. Despite our parents' repeated warnings, she never changed. In high school, she even tried to steal my boyfriend, leading to a huge fight. As adults, I naturally distanced myself from her. Unlike her, who bragged about marrying Rich without pursuing further education, I went to college and found a job. Through my company, I met and married my husband, who was already a CEO. Due to past experiences, I made sure my sister didn't meet my husband until our wedding day. As expected, she caused a scene at our wedding, unable to bear the thought of her sister marrying Rich. My parents had to intervene and she was escorted out of the venue. Although my husband and sister never met for a while, as time passed, they happened to meet again by chance. This encounter gave them the opportunity to develop an intimate relationship. I was dumbfounded by both her audacity to pursue another woman's husband and his willingness to stray. My sister believed my husband had an annual income of $2 million, but in reality, he had been dismissed from his CEO position due to negligence and was unemployed. Unaware of the truth, my sister seemed on the verge of bursting into triumphant laughter, believing she had gotten everything she wanted. However, the situation changed dramatically the moment she heard the lawyer's words. "It's not an income of $2 million, but a debt of $2 million. What? She had taken everything from me, thinking she was entering a dream life. But instead, she faced a nightmare. I am Amy Brown, a 33-year-old working at a design company for almost 11 years. When I first joined, the company had fewer than 10 employees. Everyone, including the CEO, was involved in all aspects of the business. I used to do field visits during the day and handle invoices and subcontractor orders in the evening. The end of the month was particularly busy, but it was fulfilling. The company's performance improved, and after 3 years, we established a subsidiary, led by the CEO's younger brother, Matt Brown. He joined the subsidiary as president upon his request, having worked elsewhere before. Through interactions with the subsidiary, I grew close to Matt and soon started dating him. We got married after 6 months of dating. I resigned to become a full-time housewife. For the first year, I devoted myself to household chores while my husband, enjoying his status as president, often skipped work. I warned him several times, but he always made excuses, saying his brother would handle any problems, and continued his lazy lifestyle. Desperate, I consulted my brother-in-law more than once or twice. When my brother-in-law admonished him, my husband would work seriously for a while. However, this never lasted long, and he would soon return to his usual sluggish way of life. After about a year of this, my brother-in-law suggested I return to work. Valuing my previous performance, he offered me a position as a secretary. I discussed it with my husband, who was indifferent, so I decided to return to work. I've always been career-driven. I felt unfulfilled as a housewife. The executives at my brother-in-law's company, familiar faces all, were happy to have me back. Working as my brother-in-law's secretary, I learned that my husband's subsidiary was in dire straits. Despite his assurances, it was deep in the red, with performance steadily declining. In collaboration with my brother-in-law, I tried to revive my husband's company, but it was too late. The company's performance was in such a bad state that it was difficult to return it to its former level. Despite the company's impending collapse, my husband remained nonchalant. My love for him was fading, but I held on to the hope that he would eventually reform. However, my expectations were misplaced, and our marriage, like his company, began its own countdown to collapse. Even as the company faltered, my husband's habits didn't change. He would arrive at the office late, delegate all his work to the employees, and spend his days surfing the internet. Many employees left the company due to his attitude. I tried repeatedly to persuade him to turn things around, but he wouldn't listen, dismissing my concerns because I wasn't the president. Even showing him the financial statements, illustrating the debts and declining sales, didn't help. He ignored warnings of potential bankruptcy. Finding the situation unmanageable, I consulted my brother-in-law. Previously, my husband would change his behavior temporarily after a reprimand from him. But now he wouldn't even listen to his own brother. My brother-in-law, along with the company's consultant accountant, tried everything possible, but the outlook was bleak. despite my brother-in-law's personal efforts to salvage the company. My husband refused to change his ways. My brother-in-law went from anger to utter disbelief at my husband's irresponsibility, ignoring repeated warnings and advice from both of us. My husband continued to neglect the business. My brother-in-law, realizing the subsidiary's recovery was improbable, consulted with a lawyer and decided to proceed with bankruptcy. However, concerned about the employees, he decided to transfer the company's executives to his own company and helped other employees with transfers or finding new jobs. My husband expected to work as an executive in my brother-in-law's company, but life is not so lenient. Find a job on your own and start over, my brother-in-law told him coldly. Furthermore, personal debts incurred by my husband were discovered at this time. He had been trading stocks at home and had accumulated significant debt from gambling. I was nearly faint when I heard the total debt was $2 million. Despite this, my husband showed no remorse, blaming my brother-in-law for not employing him and even attempting to access my personal savings. My love for him had completely vanished. I can't count how many times I thought about divorce. However, my relationship with my brother-in-law, for whom I work as a secretary, held me back. I know I'm trusted by the staff and have contributed to the company, and my brother-in-law promoted me to secretary in recognition of my work. But, being the wife of his younger brother played a role in my reappointment as a secretary. I doubt such an offer would have been made if I were a stranger, regardless of my contributions. I feared that disclosing my thoughts about divorce might jeopardize my job. Torn between the desire for divorce and the fear of losing my job, I spent many sleepless nights. Meanwhile, my husband was doing nothing. He aimlessly wandered every day, leading a self-indulgent life. My husband probably thought he could rely on my earnings to get by. Furthermore, he deceptively believed that his brother-in-law would eventually cover his debts, which was completely unrealistic. As for me, my feelings towards my husband were only drifting further away. During dinner one evening, my husband mentioned meeting my sister Patty in town. My sister, the same age as my husband, is a freeter with no marriage history, constantly engaged in matchmaking, dreaming of becoming a housewife. She has lofty expectations for a partner, an annual income over $100,000, and no living with in-laws. At 43, it's unrealistic for her to find such a match. My marriage, which was quite a catch given my then-husband's near $2 million income, had always been a source of jealousy for her. My marriage was, so to speak, a match above my social standing. My sister had been insisting it was odd for the younger sister to marry first, and demanding I give up my husband, pushing these unreasonable demands onto me. When I heard that my sister and husband had met by chance, I had a bad feeling about it. There's a saying about a woman's sixth sense, and perhaps that's what I was experiencing. One day, my sister called me out, presumably to treat her to a meal. But I welcomed the chance to spend time with someone other than my husband. She appeared in youthful makeup and flashy clothes. Despite wishing she'd dress more age-appropriately, we went to a nearby restaurant. While my sister and I were having a casual conversation over a meal, she suddenly said, "Divorce your husband, Matt." I couldn't believe my ears and was filled with disbelief. What was she trying to say? I was so shocked that I couldn't even speak. And then she calmly started talking about her relationship with my husband. She explained that she and my husband had started going out for meals and outings after bumping into each other in the city. Over time, they became close and apparently even developed a physical relationship, discussing their desire to be together. However, my husband was hesitant to leave me, despite wanting to be with my sister. That's why she called me, to settle things. Hearing this, I couldn't help but wonder what these two grown adults were thinking. Honestly, I felt neither anger nor sadness, just disbelief and pity. My sister, taking my silence as refusal, aggressively demanded a divorce again. Agreeing to the divorce wasn't an issue for me, but I needed to discuss it with my brother-in-law first. I promised her I'd talk with my husband that night. My sister's face brightened instantly, and she agreed readily. After parting ways with her, I returned to the office and confided in my brother-in-law about my decision to divorce. He apologized for his younger brother's failings and reassured me that my divorce had nothing to do with my job at the company. He encouraged me to do what I felt was right and reminded me that I was a valued employee, always welcome to rely on him for support. I truly appreciated the depth of my brother-in-law's kindness and found it astonishing how different two brothers could be. With his approval, I resolved to divorce my husband, feeling unable to deal with the trouble any longer. When I returned home, I found my husband lounging and watching TV. The thought that I would soon be saying goodbye to my husband strangely lifted my spirits. Dinner was ready, and my husband took his seat. I chose that moment to tell him about my conversation with my sister. He was clearly flustered. I told him what I knew about their relationship and that my sister had asked for a divorce. However, my husband insisted that he had no intention of divorcing and that my sister was speaking out of turn. I tried to clarify the facts by reconfirming whether there had been an affair. My husband hesitated for a moment, but probably realizing he couldn't escape the truth since I had already heard it from my sister. He admitted to the relationship but firmly refused to consider divorce. However, I felt that the love between them had already faded. And even though I pointed this out, my husband wouldn't listen. So, I asked him why he was so opposed to divorce. He then admitted it was because he would have no means to repay his debts. I was dumbfounded and lost for words at this revelation. Not only because of his usual attitude but also because he intended to make me shoulder his debt repayment. Realizing that further discussion was futile, I decided to leave the house the next day while my husband was still asleep. I then decided to rent a hotel room near my workplace and use it as a temporary residence. I reported the situation to my brother-in-law and got his approval to commute from there. He offered to let me stay at his house, but not wanting to inconvenience his family, I declined the offer. Instead, I consulted with him about my husband refusing to divorce. My brother-in-law immediately took out his mobile phone and made a call. A few minutes later, his phone rang. Apparently, he had asked the legal advisor of his company to find a lawyer specializing in divorce cases. The legal advisor promptly arranged everything and set up an appointment with the opposing lawyer. My brother-in-law told me it was okay to leave early and sent me off right away. I am really indebted to him. I thanked him and headed straight to the lawyer's office. I reported the current situation and expressed my desire to divorce. The lawyer immediately contacted a private detective agency to secure at least minimal evidence of the affair. A week later, he arranged for negotiations with my husband in the presence of the lawyer. I was advised not to contact my husband directly until then, but I had no intention of doing so from the start. A week later, as promised, I called my husband and sister to a cafe near my home to have a discussion. When the conversation started, my sister demanded a divorce and said she would pay compensation. My husband, who was most surprised by my sister's words, tried to persuade her, saying he couldn't pay, but my sister insisted it was okay. Eventually, my husband was overruled by my sister and agreed. My sister started saying things like she wanted to accept his feelings if he loved her that much. The lawyer and I couldn't help but smile wryly. Well, if that makes them agree to the divorce, it's great news for me. The lawyer quickly made arrangements for the divorce while they were still agreeable. The compensation involved me demanding $500,000 from my husband. Considering the division of property, my brother-in-law decided to buy the house and other properties. The sale proceeds would be split between my husband and me, with my husband's share going towards his debt repayment. There would be hardly any money left for my husband. In fact, considering the debt, it would be a significant loss. Worried, I reminded him to make sure he paid properly. Instead of my husband, it was my sister who replied with a triumphant look. Thanks to this, I'm marrying into money. As a thank you, I'll give you as much compensation as you want. She continued, saying that since my husband's annual income was $2 million, $500,000 was just a drop in the bucket. To this, my lawyer retorted, "It's not income, but a debt of $2 million. What? I still burst into laughter, remembering her expression at that moment. It was exactly like a deer in headlights. Apparently, my sister was unaware that my husband was unemployed and in debt. She asked my husband if what the lawyer said was true. My husband calmly affirmed it. My sister slumped into her chair as if her legs had given out. However, she had already signed the divorce papers and the compensation agreement. There was no way to cancel it now. My sister left the office with a soulless expression, staggering out. My husband followed her out of the office. And so, my short marriage to my husband came to an end. Afterward, it seems that my ex-husband and sister never ended up getting married. My ex-husband's parents ended up taking on his debt. My ex-husband's parents, which also means my brother-in-law's parents, decided that he would work for free at my brother-in-law's company to repay the debt. Moreover, they also covered all the compensation payments to me on behalf of my ex-husband. Furthermore, they even came to apologize to me for my ex-husband's incompetence. They said it was their fault for how they raised him, but I felt it wasn't a matter of upbringing, as my brother-in-law, raised the same way, turned out to be a very respectable person. It was a problem with my ex-husband as an individual. Regarding my ex-husband, given the amount of his debt, I think he will have to work for free for the rest of his life. As for my sister, after our parents found out about her involvement with my husband, she was disowned. My sister had always lived at home. Intending to marry my ex-husband, she had already quit her part-time job, with her dreams of a glamorous marriage shattered. My sister ended up losing everything, her home, her job, everything. But that's not all. To pay the compensation to me, she used up all her savings, and the remaining amount was covered by our parents. Now, she faces a life of working and repaying her debt to our parents, completely out of savings and kicked out of the family home. My sister was forced to live with literally nothing. Thanks to the support of my brother-in-law and his parents, the full compensation was paid after the divorce was finalized. As for me, I used the compensation to buy a slightly larger apartment near my workplace. It was a bit expensive due to its location near the station and in a safe neighborhood. But that wasn't a problem. After all, my lawyer had managed to get me $500,000 in compensation. Hiring a competent lawyer really is important for navigating a divorce advantageously, I realized once again. Of course, I still work as a secretary at my brother-in-law's company. The subsidiary went bankrupt, and there was a time when the main company was in trouble. But my brother-in-law quickly turned things around, and we are busier than ever. The staff from the subsidiary are pleased to be recognized for their work, and are performing even better than they did at the previous company. It made me realize again how much the leadership of the top affects the entire company. As for my ex-husband, he is starting from scratch as an ordinary employee. Originally, he was treated quite favorably as the company president's brother. But after a directive from my brother-in-law, the president, everyone, from the executives to other employees, is dealing with him without reserve. He spends his days being reprimanded for his mistakes. But he can't quit or escape because of the debt to his parents. My sister, on the other hand, is in an even more miserable situation. Kicked out of the family home, she apparently hops from one shared residence to another, having no permanent place to live. She can't find a steady job due to her unstable living situation and barely makes ends meet with day jobs. She can't even afford her phone bill, so she can't use matchmaking apps for dating. Well, it's a case of reaping what she sowed, so there's no room for sympathy. Though I had the unpleasant experience of being betrayed by my husband and sister, I think it all worked out for the best in the end. Sooner or later, my marriage with my husband would have ended. I'm not sure if I'll remarry, but if the right person comes along, I'll consider it then. For now, I'm just focusing on my job and enjoying my fulfilling days. Young girls are the best. What? It's all good. I'm going to date Emily. Amelia, you're no longer needed. William laughs loudly. I couldn't hide my confusion at his behavior. Stop it already. There's no way Emily would date someone like you. Huh? Isn't Emily pregnant with my child? What am I supposed to do if I don't take responsibility? Don't joke about this. Olivia stamps her foot. To this, William calmly retorts. Getting angry at me won't help. It was Emily who came on to me. Emily would never do that. Whether she would or wouldn't. I'm the one she approached. So, it's true, and I've done nothing wrong. William slams his bag on the table as if to make a point. It seems nothing really got through to him. Well, if that's the case, I have my own plans. What did he do? I'll give him plenty of time to think about it thoroughly. Of course, he doesn't have the right to refuse. He has to pay for doing whatever he wants. What should I do? He doesn't need to say that. I'll make sure he gets to where he needs to go. I gently placed my hand on Olivia's shoulder. My name is Amelia Stewart. I work in the office of a construction company run by my father. I recently turned 50 and have been feeling the need to slow down a bit more. However, I can't quit this job. The reason is that my husband, William, is unreliable. William runs a local electronics store. He is the owner, but the business is far from thriving. Complaints from customers are increasing, while the amount of work seems to be decreasing significantly. That's why I have to work hard. If I don't, our household finances will collapse. That's why I'm still working at this age. However, my life is not all darkness. In fact, my daughter Olivia recently graduated from university and got a job at a famous apparel manufacturer. It's lonely to see Olivia become independent, but honestly, I'm also relieved. So, my current worry is only about William. I'm not asking for much. I just want him to work properly. But William doesn't work seriously. That's why I always carry a divorce paper in my pocket. I muttered with a self-mocking tone. I want to divorce, but I just can't bring myself to do it. For several years, I've been living this indecisive life. You might wonder why I married a man who doesn't work. It's because William wasn't always unserious. My family runs a construction business. My father is a carpenter, and now my brother Charles is also helping out. My father's construction company and William's electronics store have been working together for a long time. To put it simply, it goes like this. First, my father's construction company takes on remodeling jobs. However, remodeling can't be done by carpenters alone. Depending on the situation, people qualified in plastering, gas, or electrical work may be needed. In such cases, my father would turn to William's electronics store for help. Well, at first it was William's father who worked, and then it shifted to William. Anyway, in the course of working together, my father took notice of William. You're hardworking. You'd be an ideal match for Amelia. Amelia, she's your daughter, right? Yes. She's close in age to you. And there's nothing to complain about as a marriage partner, right? That was the beginning of our marriage. So, it goes without saying that William was serious at first. I also thought he must be a good person since my father introduced him. But as we spent more time together after marriage, William gradually began to show his true nature. By the time Olivia was in elementary school, William had started to spend many nights out drinking. You've been out drinking again? It's fine, just a little bit. Just a little bit, but isn't that too much drinking? When I frowned, William scowled back unhappily. It's because I work that we can live, right? That's true, but Olivia is in elementary school now. And will need more money going forward. I know. Don't worry. William laughed it off. I felt unsure if he really understood. Several weeks later, on a holiday, I was preparing dinner when someone unexpectedly visited. Wondering who it could be on a holiday, I headed to the entrance. Peeking outside, I saw an unfamiliar man in black. May I help you? I opened the door slightly and called out. The man answered in a low voice. Is William Stewart here? Do you have some business with my husband? You're his wife? Well, then, you'll do. Pay your husband's debt. The man shouted loudly. I instinctively closed the entrance door. With a loud bang, William came rushing out of the living room, alerted by the noise. What's wrong, Amelia? Someone I don't know, he's demanding payment for your debt. Call the police, now. I was almost shouting. But William didn't seem to be moving to do anything. Wondering why, I saw him walking past me. He opened the front door himself and started talking to the man outside. Could you please wait just a little? No way. I told you today's the deadline. The man raised his voice again. At that moment, Olivia, who had followed William, started crying. While I was comforting Olivia, I watched the two men talking. It seemed like they were having a serious conversation. William, you have debts. As I stood there in shock, William suddenly began to prostrate himself. I'm begging you. Please understand, I have a daughter and expenses. The man's expression clouded over. Seeing Olivia crying, he sighed. I'll give you one more week. With those words, the man briskly closed the door and left. Naturally, after he was gone, I confronted William. What debt is this? Who is that person? I bombarded him with questions. At first, William tried to evade answering. But when I didn't ease up on my questioning, William finally seemed to concede. I just ran up a tab at the bar. It turned out that someone from a shop had come to collect a debt. I was relieved that it wasn't someone suspicious. On the other hand, I was also furious. Sort out the money yourself. And, if you get into debt again, I won't forgive you. Yeah, I won't get into debt again. You promise. Eventually, William borrowed money from his parents to settle the tab. Normally, after such an incident, one would become more serious. But William was different. Far from getting more serious, he began to go out even more. Moreover, the amount of money he brought home started to decrease dramatically as he seemed to be spending lavishly. Moreover, complaints about William's electronics store began to come to our home phone. I even heard complaints about his interactions with women. I continued to struggle with such daily problems. Eventually, reaching my limit, I confronted William. Why are complaints about your shop coming to our home phone? Huh? Don't ask me about that. Then, is it true that you asked a married woman out on a date? As I asked, William's expression changed. He suddenly looked away and started to laugh. That was, like a joke? A joke? To give a discount in exchange for dating you is? No, I mean... William started to stammer out excuses. But none of them seemed credible. As I listened to his excuses with a look of disgust, William suddenly began to get angry. Are you even listening to what I'm saying? I am listening. Liar. You were spacing out, weren't you? William raised his voice. He always shouts when things get inconvenient for him. It's a bad habit of his. But that also proved I hit the mark. The complaints over the phone were true. As William made a scene, I was thinking about that. Since that argument, our relationship only worsened. Even the smallest things would escalate into a quarrel. Isn't the meal ready yet? I had to start working because you don't bring money home. So, please wait a bit. Huh? What's with that tone? Are you looking down on me? He always raises his voice when things don't go his way. Maybe my way of speaking was bad too. But I was fed up with him not contributing to the household expenses. So, I thought it was okay to retaliate sometimes. Moreover, maybe because I often showed my displeasure with William, Olivia started to do the same. By the time she was in high school, her attitude had become even harsher. As soon as William came home, Olivia would return to her room, no matter what she was doing. Hey, Olivia. Where are you going? To my room. Are you studying? Noisy. Olivia muttered and locked herself in her room. William got angry at her attitude. What's with that attitude? What does she think of her father? I thought to myself that maybe she didn't see him as a father. But I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Putting that aside, such a family environment surely wasn't good for Olivia. I had begun to faintly consider divorce. As time passed, Olivia became a university student. After much thought, I decided to talk to her about something. With your dad being like that, how about trying to live on your own? Lately, he doesn't even come home, and I'm worried about you, Mom. I'm fine here. I found myself tearing up at Olivia's words. Indeed, William rarely came home these days. When he did, it was only to say, "Hurry up and give me some money." So, I decided to respect Olivia's wishes. If that's what you want, Olivia, then that's fine. Yay! Oh, can I bring a friend over sometime? Of course. As long as William isn't around, alright? I know. It was a few days after this conversation that Olivia brought her friend Emily over. I must admit, I was quite taken aback when I first saw Emily. She had flashy red hair and heavy makeup. However, upon actually talking to her, she seemed like a sincere and genuinely nice girl you'd find anywhere. Emily started coming over frequently after that. Because of this, she also became close to me. Here, please eat this. It's a cake. Oh, thank you. Are you sure? I got it from my part-time job. While we were having this conversation, Olivia puffed out her cheeks. Emily is my friend. Why does it seem like she's closer to you, Mom? Because she's such a good girl. I'd want her as my own daughter. Huh? Am I not enough for you? Laughing about such things showed how much Emily had become a part of our family. Then, one day, shortly after coming to our house, Emily said to Olivia, "I just met your dad over there." Olivia was at a loss for words. But Emily continued nonchalantly. "He seems like a nice person. Said he had to go to work, though." Emily, please, don't get involved with him. Why? What's the matter? Just don't, okay? Olivia spoke unusually firmly. Surprised, Emily quietly nodded. Perhaps Olivia's warning had an effect, as Emily didn't mention William again after that. Years passed, and both Olivia and Emily graduated from college. Olivia got a job at an apparel manufacturer, and Emily started working at a mobile phone shop. Their relationship remained unchanged despite working at different places. Emily still frequently visited our house. However, not long after, Emily suddenly stopped coming. I wonder if something happened? I was worried about Emily. Hoping nothing was wrong, I came home from work one day to find Olivia standing in the living room with a frightened expression. She was holding her smartphone tightly, not even bothering to change her clothes. "What's wrong, Olivia?" "Mom, actually." When she turned around, Olivia's eyes were filled with tears. This was not something minor. Intuitively feeling this, I sat down with Olivia to calm her down. Eventually, Olivia began to speak. "Actually, Emily is pregnant." "Oh, that's..." I was about to say congratulations, but I instantly held my tongue. Despite it being a seemingly happy event, Olivia had a fearful expression. As I swallowed my words, Olivia began to slowly speak. The story goes back a bit. It was about the last day Emily visited our house. After leaving our house, Emily apparently met William outside. Out of respect for being Olivia's father, Emily engaged in conversation with him. During the talk, Emily mentioned that her air conditioner was malfunctioning. William then said, "Since you're Olivia's friend, I'll take a look at it for free." Trusting his words, Emily took William to her house. There, something terrible happened with William, Olivia explained. In essence, Emily was deceived by William and subjected to a terrible ordeal. I was speechless. I felt anger at William's atrocious actions. While we were discussing this, William unusually came home. Olivia ran towards William. "Wait, Olivia." I hurried after her, but Olivia was already confronting William. "You. What did you do to Emily?" "Huh? What are you talking about? Emily is pregnant. She said you might be the father." William's eyes widened at Olivia's words. But then, he sighed as if resigning to the situation. "What did you find out, huh? Huh? What's with that attitude?" Olivia raised her voice in anger. Enraged, I also confronted William. "Is it true? Answer me. What were you thinking?" William responded with a smirk to my words. "Young girls are the best." "What? It's all good. I'm going to date Emily." "Amelia, you're no longer needed." William laughed loudly. I couldn't hide my confusion at his behavior. "Stop it already. There's no way Emily would date someone like you." "Huh? Isn't Emily pregnant with my child? What am I supposed to do if I don't take responsibility?" "Don't joke about this." Olivia stamps her foot. To this, William calmly retorts, "Getting angry at me won't help. It was Emily who came on to me. Emily would never do that. Whether she would or wouldn't. I'm the one who was approached by her. So, it's true, and I've done nothing wrong." William slammed his bag on the table as if to make a point. It seems nothing really got through to him. "Well, if that's the case, I have my own plans." "What did you do?" "I'll give you plenty of time to think about it thoroughly. Of course, you don't have the right to refuse. You have to pay for doing whatever you want." "What should I do?" "He doesn't need to say that. I'll make sure he gets to where he needs to go." I gently placed my hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Olivia, I'm sorry. I should have left William a lot earlier." I directed a stern gaze at William. But William calmly retorted, "What? You think you're in a position to leave me? Of course. You hardly work properly. William bristled. What did you say? While averting my gaze, I said my piece. I'm getting a divorce. From now on, I won't give you a single penny. Until now, William occasionally came home to get money from me before leaving. But because I indulged him, it led to him hurting Emily. It's all my fault. I had been too lenient, thinking he hardly came home. So, the first step is to cut off William's source of funds. And for that, divorce is the best option. Are you misunderstanding something? I don't live off the money I get from you. Then, it's settled. We'll get a divorce. I'm relieved you agree. I put my hand in my pocket. From there, I pulled out a blank divorce paper. Here. Submit this right now. Hey, are you serious? William suddenly became hesitant. He must have been bluffing all along. As William began to sweat, I forcibly handed him the divorce paper. Go and submit it now. TCH. Fine. William raised his voice. That means it's inconvenient for him. But it's necessary. This is just the beginning. William's agreement on the divorce papers was quickly completed, though he was reluctant. I swiftly checked the papers and confirmed about entries with him. Then I said to William, "This means we're strangers now. We're leaving."
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. I won't be troubled without you guys around. William boasted with false bravado. I never thought I'd be so frustrated that I can't legally sever the parent-child relationship. What did you say? Anyway, you're a stranger to me now. That's how I'm going to live from now on. Olivia turned her back to William and rushed into her room. I could hear the sound of her gathering her things from her room. I, too, with a sigh, spoke to William. I'll take only what I need and leave. I'll arrange for movers to pick up the larger items later.
Yeah.
Do as you please. William feigned indifference. So, just to be sure, I decided to drive the point home. What you did is a crime. You either pay damages or will be arrested. Those are your only options. Shut up. It's none of my business. William shouted and picked up his bag again from the table. I'm going out, so lock the door. After saying this loudly, William left the house in a hurry. I sighed and went back to my room. Later, after packing up, I returned to my parents' house with Olivia. When we arrived back home, my father and brother were surprised. But I didn't want to discuss the reasons in front of Olivia. You should take a bath. But... Olivia hesitated. Sensing something, father spoke up. Don't be shy, Olivia. Besides, the bathroom is freshly heated and clean. Then, I'll take you up on your offer. Father felt a bit awkward at her somewhat formal manner. As soon as Olivia left, father approached me. What happened, Amelia? Was there something you couldn't contact us about? Well, yes. Actually, I started by telling him that William had impregnated Emily and that it wasn't consensual. I also spoke about William's bad behavior, his verbal abuse towards us. And finally, that William had agreed to the divorce. Father, who had been listening silently, let out a deep sigh and clenched his fists, struggling to find words. That guy, doing such foolish things? Perhaps father felt guilty for introducing me to William. So, please be considerate towards Olivia more than me. Understood. I'll help in any way I can. Thank you, Dad. I bowed my head to Dad. After that, I decided to take a bath and rest. The next day, Olivia came to me. I have a request. Olivia whispered in my ear. It was a plan for revenge against William. Like that. Will you help me? Of course. According to Olivia, Emily was also involved in the plan. "I'll send him to hell myself," Emily had said. Feeling guilty towards Emily, I resolved to do what I could. The first thing we did was investigate William's behavior. Olivia and her acquaintance George took charge of this. George apparently worked at a detective agency. Perfect for the task. Meanwhile, I hurried to Father. I had a request for him. "Can you stop sending work to William? We want to financially corner him." I continued, explaining it was Olivia and Emily's plan. Father agreed without hesitation. "Leave it to me. Losing work from us will definitely hurt him." Of course, not all his work would disappear, but it would significantly impact him. His reputation with clients was already bad, and this would surely lead him to financial trouble. Now, all that's left is for Emily to do what she needs to do. Emily was tasked with something only she could handle. I was worried, but Emily was strong. I believed she could do it. Sometime later, the results of William's behavior investigation came in. The findings were shockingly bad. He had multiple affairs and was in debt. He really is beyond redemption. Absolutely. But it works out better for us this way. Olivia quickly put the report into her bag. "What are you going to do with that?" "This? I'm going to distribute it to everyone." "Distribute?" As I tilted my head in confusion, Olivia explained in detail. The recent investigation revealed William's affairs. However, most of his partners probably believe they are the only ones he's dating. The plan is to tell them the truth. Also, to inform them about his debts. I'll even tell the people at the places he frequents. Why? If they know he has debts, they'll try to collect the money he owes, right? That would leave William penniless. He would have no choice but to beg us for help. That was Olivia's script. However, we had no intention of lending him money. It was merely a means to lure William. The real blow would come when he turns to us for help, Olivia said with a grin. Indeed, once the plan was in motion, the stores began to collect their debts. William must have been clueless. Just by visiting the stores, he was suddenly asked to settle his tabs. The collections were quite aggressive. Within a few days, William contacted us. "Amelia? Can we talk?" William sounded hesitant over the phone. I almost burst out laughing, knowing the reason. "What's wrong?" Trying to suppress my laughter, I listened to what William had to say. Then, shamelessly, he said, "Can you lend me some money? I've had a lot of expenses lately." "It's not expenses, it's debt repayment, right?" I almost blurted out. But I held back and asked. "I thought you said you wouldn't be troubled without us?" "That's..." William stumbled for a moment but soon raised his voice. A little help is fine, right? I've been supporting you all this time." "What? Are you kidding me? You were the one being supported by me." "That's not..." I interrupted him with a raised voice. "Not contributing a single penny to the house. Always begging for money, who do you think you are?" That's... I mean, pay off your own debts. And remember, I'll be demanding property division for the divorce." After my words, William fell silent. After a moment of thought, he shouted, "Shut up. I won't rely on you anymore." That was the end of the phone call. How long will his bravado last, I wonder? I muttered to myself. For a few days, there was no contact from William. But about a week later, he contacted us again. "Help me, Amelia. Please." "What happened? Finally ran out of money?" As soon as I asked, William started to panic. No. It's the women, they're after me. What did you do? All of his affairs had been exposed. You got what you deserved. Financially and socially, you should be cornered. Don't be so cold. Come on, just hide me for a while. Please. I wondered how he could be so self-serving. I was baffled. Regardless, it was clear he was indeed cornered. It must be time for the final phase. With that judgment, I told William. All right then. I'll lend you some money. Come to our house to get it. Money. How is that going to solve anything? That's all I can offer. Right now, Olivia is at Emily's place, so this is your last chance. As I said this, William fell silent. He was probably contemplating. I hoped fervently that he wouldn't realize our plan. My heart was pounding with anticipation. Fine. I'll be there around 7 p.m. After saying that, William abruptly ended the call. Yes. It worked perfectly. I was confident that he had fallen right into our trap. Luring William to our house by offering him money was exactly what Olivia and Emily had planned. He was sure to come if promised money. The real plan was to turn him over to the police when he arrived. Meanwhile, Emily had already gone to the police station. She had filed a complaint. So, William was likely to be arrested. I quickly contacted Olivia. Got it. I'll head over there right now. After speaking with Olivia, I called the police station. A few officers agreed to come over. Together with Olivia, Emily, and a few officers, we waited for William to arrive. Eventually, it was the appointed time, but William was nowhere to be seen. Hey, maybe we've been tricked? But he should be desperate for money. Though I said this, my heart was filled with anxiety. Maybe William had figured out our plan. What would we do then? My heart felt like it was about to burst. Just then, my phone started to ring. It's him. I thought as I answered the call. However, it wasn't William on the other end. What? The police. I looked in surprise at the officers waiting with us. The call was from a different officer. Apparently, a suspicious person had been caught at a certain apartment building. That person was William. Why would he do that? But as I listened to the officer's explanation, it all made sense. William had been caught at an apartment familiar to both Olivia and Emily. Specifically, the one Emily had lived in until recently. William thought Emily was there and had broken into her old apartment. But Emily was no longer living there. She had moved out even before her pregnancy was discovered, as it was the place where she had endured trauma because of William. Emily was now living elsewhere with Olivia, something William didn't know. I rushed to the apartment with the officers already at my house. When we arrived, William was being put into a police car. A uniformed police officer near me spoke up. Are you this man's wife? No, I'm his ex-wife. I answered, visibly annoyed. That's when William noticed me. Amelia. You came for me. Reluctantly, yes. Please, help me out. I just got the wrong apartment, explain it to them for me. Her apartment? Who's he talking about? I realized he meant Emily. What are you talking about? You two aren't in that kind of relationship. Hey, are you trying to frame me? Cut it out. That should be my line. I couldn't hold back anymore. Emily has filed a complaint against you. No matter your excuses, you're going to be arrested. Really? For real? William was dumbfounded. Meanwhile, things were wrapping up behind me. One of the officers who came with me quietly got into the patrol car. He pulled out an arrest warrant and showed it clearly to William. What followed was inevitable. William was arrested on the spot. William was later charged with crimes including trespassing. Of course, the incident with Emily was also included. Further investigations revealed he had deceived other women, committing what is essentially marriage fraud. He had also been involved with married women. Ultimately, William faced multiple charges and received a prison sentence without probation. Furthermore, he faced civil lawsuits from various parties involved. In this way, he received a true punishment, both financially and socially. William is now in prison. I hope he reflects on the gravity of his actions and sincerely repents. I truly wish for that. To backtrack a bit, after William was arrested, Emily safely gave birth to a baby boy. There was the option not to have the baby, but Emily told us, "This child is my precious baby." I was deeply moved by her decision. But there was a reason behind Emily's words. During her pregnancy, Emily had a DNA test done on the baby. The test revealed that the father was Emily's boyfriend. Her boyfriend wanted to support Emily, and they decided to have the baby together. Now, Emily and her boyfriend are struggling through parenthood. I wonder what Olivia thinks about seeing them. When I asked, she said, "I'm planning to marry George too." It turns out George is her boyfriend. I felt somewhat relieved. I had thought that this whole ordeal might make Olivia pessimistic about marriage. So, her answer was the most gratifying one I could have hoped for.
About the car, I'll take it. The loan is in your name, so you'll take care of the remaining payments, okay? You see, I've fallen in love with someone else. Saying this, my husband suddenly disappeared. What was left for me was a daughter and a debt of $500,000. I am Donna, 40 years old, a working housewife in DC. My family consists of my husband Luke, who is the same age as me, and our 12-year-old daughter Janet. Janet has been incredibly intelligent since she was young. By the time she started elementary school, she could read and write effortlessly and had memorized numerous encyclopedias. Watching the news, she would start debates with me, a truly curious child. She was the best in her class academically, and her quick thinking was astounding. It's hard to believe that someone with such a high IQ was my child. As her parents, we were always amazed by Janet's intelligence. On the other hand, Luke was always lazy and fickle, quitting every job he got. He hopped from one company to another, and whenever his salary seemed to increase, it would soon return to the level of his first salary. Our family never saved any money, and our future seemed so uncertain that I wanted to quit my job to focus on and develop Janet's potential. However, I couldn't afford to quit, as we needed my income. So I reluctantly continued to work full-time. Recently, Luke's job finally stabilized. He surpassed his record of 1 year of continuous employment, staying at the same place for 3 years, becoming a permanent employee with a stable income. Until then, he was just lazy, but he started talking about nurturing Janet's intellectual curiosity and creating family memories. So despite the risks, we bought a large van worth $60,000, a significant upgrade from our small car. This van had a spacious cargo area suitable for placing a makeshift bed, almost like a camper van. However, as Luke had just become a full-time employee, his credit wasn't good enough for a loan, so we had to take it out in my name. This was expected as even our home loan was in my name. Then, on the day the van was finally delivered, an incident occurred. I couldn't take the day off from work, so Luke went to pick up the van. During work, I saw a message from him on my phone. "I'll take the car. Since the loan is in your name, you'll handle the repayments. Thanks. Confused by this sudden message, I immediately called Luke. I thought he might ignore me, but he casually answered the phone. What's up? What do you mean, what's up? What's the meaning of your message? It means exactly what it says. Luke, with a look of confusion, said, I don't understand what you're saying. But to me, it made even less sense. Then, unexpectedly, Luke said something I could never have anticipated. You see, I've fallen in love with another woman. What? What do you mean? I asked, completely stunned. At first, it was just a fling, but now I'm serious about her. I've decided to start my life over with her. So, see ya. Leaving me speechless. Luke was about to hang up, but then said something shocking. Oh, by the way, I still have the divorce papers we signed during the fight. I'll file them. Finally, he said that, and before I could respond, the call was abruptly ended. Hearing the beep beep of the disconnected line, I realized the extent of the betrayal. Understanding the situation, I was frozen in place, as if struck by lightning. After that, no matter how many times I called, Luke never answered the phone again. After Luke's sudden departure, I was left in a daze. I couldn't focus at work, wondering if this was all just a dream. As I returned home. Indeed, it was true that during a past argument, we impulsively signed our divorce papers. Opening the drawer where those papers were kept, I found they had indeed disappeared. Thus, I was left with a massive debt, a $60,000 loan for the car and $440,000 remaining on our house mortgage, totaling approximately $500,000. I understood the situation but couldn't accept it. I repeatedly messaged and called Luke, but whether he ignored them or not, he never responded even though he read the messages. With no idea of his whereabouts, it seemed like Luke had truly vanished. My perceptive daughter Janet couldn't help but notice my state. A few days later, after dinner, she looked at me worriedly. Mom, are you okay? Have you been feeling unwell lately? Startled, I thought about pretending everything was fine, but realized my poor acting wouldn't fool her. I decided to be honest about my feelings. Well, maybe I'm just a bit tired. Janet seemed to realize I was still hiding something. Mom, you're doing that thing with your hands, rubbing them together. That's what you do when you're lying. Caught by Janet's keen observation, I couldn't help but smile wryly. She continued, Dad hasn't been home for the past couple days. Does that have something to do with this? Janet's clear eyes seemed to see right through me, making me flinch. I took a deep breath and decided to tell her the truth. I knew I couldn't keep this hidden forever, so I explained everything that had happened. After hearing it all, Janet sighed. I see. That's just like Dad, isn't it? What? You're not surprised? I asked in amazement. Janet replied, not really. I kinda thought something like this might happen someday. She seemed so composed, which made my agitation seem foolish. But deep down, she must be saddened by our divorce. Apologizing to her in my heart for my inadequacy, I decided to work even harder from the next day. However, I wasn't the toughest person, and my deteriorating mental state, coupled with my physical health, worsened day by day. One day, during a company-wide inventory in the warehouse, I couldn't keep standing despite my efforts. I collapsed on the spot. What's wrong? No, I just feel a bit nauseous. I'll take a short break. That was the last thing I remember before losing consciousness. I vaguely sensed my colleagues worrying and calling out to me, but then everything went black. When I awoke, I saw a stark white ceiling. Surrounded by numerous tubes, I was in a hospital. After I lost consciousness, my colleagues called an ambulance. The doctor said I needed a thorough examination and I was admitted to the hospital. Blaming myself for my lack of strength, I wet my pillow with tears. In the evening, the usually calm and collected Janet rushed into the hospital, panicking. As I wiped away my tears, she began to speak frantically. "Mom, are you okay? You're not gonna die, right?" Seeing my usually mature daughter in such a panic, I stroked her head, reassuring her. "What are you talking about? I can't die and leave you alone. I'm fine." "That's a relief. I was so scared." Janet was still only 12. I had to get better for her sake. With renewed determination, I prepared myself to recover. But my condition was more serious than I thought. The doctors found shadows on my internal organs and suggested surgery, suspecting it might be malignant. I underwent the surgery as advised. Fortunately, the tumor was benign, but I was told to keep monitoring it. After a month, I was able to leave the hospital. It was exactly 1 month since Luke disappeared. Upon returning home, I checked the mailbox and found an envelope. Inside the house, I opened it to discover a reminder notice for the car loan payment. I was puzzled as my bank account had a substantial amount of money, enough to cover more than a month's worth of loan repayments. That's strange. Rushing to check my bank balance online, I was shocked to see the amount. The balance displayed there was $3. Refusing to believe it, I kept pressing the refresh button repeatedly, but no matter how many times I did, the number 3 was all that appeared, mockingly on the screen. What? No way, there should be $40,000. On the verge of panic, I checked the shelf where my passbook was usually kept, only to find it empty. Luke. The culprit was clear, but Luke was nowhere to be found, and there was nothing I could do. Even if I wanted to sell the car, it was gone. Since Luke left, nothing good has happened. Feeling this way, my heart became completely heavy with sadness. Noticing my state, Janet kindly patted my shoulder, showing her concern. "Mom, you are pale. Are you feeling sick again?" I had no choice but to reveal the situation to Janet. "I'm physically fine, but your father took not only the car, but all our savings too. I can't return to work right away, and I'm in trouble." Then Janet, placing her hands on her hips and speaking in a firm tone, said, "Don't worry, Mom. We're both alive and well. I'll look for jobs online, even if I have to hide my age. I can try programming. They pay well." Hearing my 12-year-old daughter's encouraging words, I realized I couldn't afford to be down. "I'm sorry to worry you. I'll do my best. I'll promise." I smiled, and Janet, looking pleased, smiled back mischievously and suggested a plan. "First things first, let's get the car back from Dad." I turned to her in surprise. "How can we do that?" "The car's in your name, right?" "Yes, it is." Unable to decipher Janet's thoughts, I listened intently. "So here's what we'll do." Hearing the strategy Janet outlined, I was so impressed that I instinctively slapped my knee in admiration. However, my sense of relief was quickly replaced by anxiety. "But I don't even know where your dad is." "We can find out. Remember the GPS? We installed it on Dad's phone after that one time I got lost." Previously, when Janet unexpectedly got lost, we gave her a child's mobile phone to prevent such incidents in the future and installed a GPS app on both Luke's and my phones. "Dad's been moving around a lot. I've been keeping an eye on him." "Really? But how will we catch him?" Janet smirked. "I've already got a plan." I was astonished at my daughter's cunning strategy, which even included information about Luke's affair partner. "Let's make Dad, who betrayed us, pay for what he's done." Thus, Janet and I began our preparations. A few days later, my phone rang. "Donna, is that you? Help me." "Yes. Who is this?" It was Luke. He was angry at my pretending not to recognize him. "What are you talking about? I'm your husband. I'm being questioned by the police on the street. If things continue like this, I might be taken to the police station. Come and explain for me. Fine, I understand. Just wait there a bit. Knowing from the GPS that Luke was surprisingly close, I took Janet to his location. There he was, standing in front of the car, being questioned by the police. I informed the officers that we would have a discussion and asked them to leave for the time being. Then, looking somewhat embarrassed, Luke instructed Janet and me to get into the car. Inside was a young woman, Luke's mistress, glaring at us. Frankly, I didn't care about her presence at all. Once the door was closed, Luke sighed and said, "I'm glad you came. But why were those cops questioning me?" "Why? Because the car was missing and I filed a theft report." Donna replied. Luke's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Why would you do that?" "What do you mean, why? If someone steals your car, of course, you report it." Luke continued to argue, claiming that crimes between spouses don't count and that it was shared properly, but he and I were already divorced. Such excuses were invalid. "You were the one who filed the divorce papers, remember? Using someone else's car without permission is theft." "I just borrowed it for a bit." "Oh, just borrowed? Then I guess you'll be returning it." I extended my hand and Luke, seemingly resigned, reluctantly handed over the car keys. Janet, who had been quietly observing, then spoke up. "Dad, why did you leave us for her?" Luke, not expecting such a direct question from his daughter, was visibly shaken and struggled to respond. The woman, however, suddenly laughed and answered Janet's question. "Because I'm younger and prettier than your mom. He's so crazy about me that he doesn't care about you guys. And you know what?" "I wasn't asking you!" Janet cut her off sharply. "Dad, you answer me." Stephanie fell silent at Janet's assertiveness and Luke remained quiet. "If you won't answer, then I'll have the police take you away." At this, Luke panicked and said, Wait, I'll talk. Just give me a chance." Stephanie, Luke's mistress, had joined his company as a new employee 4 months ago. They hit it off at a welcome party and quickly became involved. Stephanie was already pregnant, and Luke had decided to leave his family for a new life with her. He had taken the car intending to sell it but hadn't done so yet. "You've been traveling a lot, haven't you?" "Yeah, just a little trip. But how do you know that?" "The GPS app. Remember, we installed it." Luke's shoulders slumped as he remembered. "It was on purpose. I suggested installing the GPS when I noticed you acting weird." I was surprised by Janet's revelation. "You are something else." Not wanting to be outdone, I faced Luke. "Return $40,000 you stole from me now." "But that's Marshall property." "What are you talking about? That money was mine, saved since before we were married." Apparently, Luke had already spent $40,000 with Stephanie. I was beyond angry. I was astounded at this absurdity of it all. "Not only did you use the car, but you also spent all the money. This is a serious crime. Or did you just borrow that money too?" While we were talking, Stephanie tried to sneak away quietly. However, the moment she stepped out of the car, she gasped in shock. There stood her parents, their faces rigid with anger. "Why are you here, Mom and Dad?" "I called them," Janet said bluntly. While I was in the hospital, Janet had gone to Luke's company, pretending to cry and saying, "My dad left us." She quickly learned that Stephanie was the suspect, and the compassionate employees provided her parents' address. Luke and Stephanie's relationship was an open secret at their company. They were always together, and it was clear to everyone that their relationship was more than just professional, especially since they left the company at the same time. I showed them a picture of old lady, and they agreed to talk to me. Stephanie, now overwhelmed by being called old lady, couldn't react to the shock. I added fuel to the fire. "Stephanie, was it? I see your belly is quite big. When is the baby due?" Everyone's attention turned to Stephanie's momentarily stunned expression. In 3 months. So soon? Let me think. 1, 2, 3. Wait, that doesn't add up. Confused, Luke looked at us. What's going on? Even though you have a child, you don't understand? Pregnancy to birth is about 9 months. Didn't you meet her 4 months ago? Even if she got pregnant right away, why would the baby be born in 7 months? Luke finally understood and began to tremble. Stephanie, did you deceive me? Stephanie defiantly replied, Yeah, I thought I could fool someone as dumb as you. Don't joke with me. You ruined my life. As Luke and Stephanie started an ugly quarrel, Janet and I called the police again. Soon, a police car arrived. Please, not the police. Luke's plea sounded almost like a cry, but Janet and I looked at him coldly. Once you've paid your dues, return my money slowly. I'll find a place for you to work. Property division, child support, half of the mortgage, and $40,000 you stole from me. Work hard and pay it all back. To Stephanie, who watched Luke being led away as if it was someone else's problem, I also said, You knew about this, so you are an accomplice to theft. If Luke can't pay back the money, you'll have to. Be prepared. Stephanie, trembling, looked to her parents for help, but they were beyond consoling her. Thus, Janet and I successfully dealt with Luke and his mistress. Though they faced charges, they were quickly bailed out due to being first offenders and showing remorse. However, they were now embroiled in a hellish repayment life. I managed to secure full payment of my demands from both of them and also ensured that Luke promised to pay $600 per month for Janet's child support. I arranged for Luke to work at a subcontractor's warehouse affiliated with my company, where his salary would be garnished to repay me. Amidst all this, I wasn't completely unaffected, but gradually my health improved. And now I'm back to work, feeling energetic every day. Living with Janet, just the two of us, she earnestly helps with household chores. As a parent, my only wish is for Janet to lead a life as flourishing and beautiful as a fully bloomed English rose, true to the essence of her name.
I don't need a damn kid. Phil locks me, heavily pregnant, in the sauna room and leaves the house with a sickening smile on his face. As I watch his back disappearing, shaking with anger, an unexpected person comes to my rescue. I can never forgive him. I can't stand the thought of not being able to get back at him in any way. Overwhelmed with anger, I stood up and, with the help of a collaborator, vowed to take my revenge on him. I will definitely show him hell. I won't let this go. Thus, I begin my plan to show him hell. My name is Courtney Hansen. I'm a 34-year-old housewife and currently 9 months pregnant. I have a husband, Phil, and our life was happy until we got married. I met Phil at a matchmaking event. I have a physically disabled mother and was working while taking care of her. With little financial freedom and considering my age, I wanted someone to help me. A support for my life. That's why I started looking for a marriage partner. About a year after I started attending the event, I met Phil. He was a surgeon with a high income, earning well over $100,000 a year. He had so many rivals vying for his attention due to his overflowing charm. Women surrounded him, leaving no opportunity for me to even speak to him. I thought to myself, there's no way I can fit into this picture. With someone as popular as him, there's no way he would notice someone like me. Maybe I should just back off. Just as I was about to give up, to my surprise, Phil approached me and started a conversation. That bracelet is cute. I noticed you looking over here and couldn't help but say something. Was that okay? The bracelet was a graduation gift from my mother. It wasn't an expensive brand, just a sentimental item, but his compliment made me happy. And I responded to him with a bright expression. Phil looked at me kindly, and before we knew it, we were talking until the event ended. We continued our light-hearted conversation until the very end, never parting. Then, he asked for my contact information. This became the catalyst for our relationship to develop further. Before we started dating, I shared with him about my mother and my reasons for starting to look for a marriage partner, seeking hope and support in life. He held my hand, sympathized with my struggles, and appreciated all the efforts I had made. If I can be of help, would you let me be your support? Moved by his kind gaze, I accepted his confession and started dating him. I was overjoyed that Phil accepted me with my circumstances and loved me wholeheartedly. A year into our relationship, he proposed. Of course, I had no reason to refuse. I couldn't think of any other option but to happily accept. I never imagined that everything up to that point was a sweet trap to ensnare me. Women should just stay at home. They can't earn much anyway. It's better if you do the chores, and I worked. Right after getting married, Phil made me quit my job. Perhaps due to his family's ancient lineage, his way of thinking was also outdated. Women should protect the home. Men should earn outside. That's the custom and tradition he was raised with. So I was told to become a housewife and take care of the house. But, wouldn't it be better for both of us if I also worked? And we saved more money. What's that supposed to mean? Are you mocking me? Saying that my income isn't enough and you're unsure about our future? Whenever I suggest working outside, Phil always gets upset like this. If I do housework, he berates me for not doing it properly, leading to days filled with verbal abuse. For me, who thought of married life as something happy, this reality is unbearably hard to accept. Why do you say that? I didn't mean it like that. Shut up. Are you talking back to me? Whenever I tried to express my opinion, Phil would often shout at me as if in a tantrum and throw things. Though he never hit me directly, he always threw things close enough to hit me. And gradually, I became terrified even when he raised his voice. Mentally worn down by fear and anxiety, I continued days where I couldn't stand up to him. I even tried to run away from home, but he had installed surveillance cameras inside the house, monitoring my every move from his workplace computer all day. Any unusual behavior was immediately noticed. Furthermore, as soon as he made me quit my job, my mother was admitted to a nursing home. Her physical condition and cognitive decline had progressed, and home care was difficult. When we decided to get married, there had already been talk of her moving into a facility. Don't worry about the cost. Let's find a facility where your mother can enjoy the rest of her life comfortably. He chose a well-known, luxurious nursing home in the area, and my mother started to live there. She seemed very satisfied with her life in that facility. If I ran away from him, I would take away my mother's seemingly happy life. If she lived with me, a jobless person, she might not be happy. Our standard of living would certainly drop, and she might suffer. All these thoughts circulated in my head, and I couldn't muster the courage to leave him. If I can just withstand this life, perhaps my mother could be happy. At least until she reaches the end of her life, I have to endure. With that thought, I continued to endure his emotional abuse. But then, an incident happened that made me give up on this idea. I'm pregnant. I felt unwell and had not menstruated, so I visited an obstetrician-gynecologist. Then, the doctor announced something unbelievable, and my world went dark. Yes, congratulations. You're currently in the 8th week. You can get your maternity booklet by the next visit. While the nurses watched over me warmly with smiles, my face lost all color, and my vision began to blur. It's strange. Because he said he was sterile. He thought he had azoospermia. During our marriage, Phil had made me promise several things. First, when I demand sex, never refuse. Managing a husband's health is also a wife's job. That includes sex. I'll do it when I feel like it, so never demand it from me. And just quietly comply with my requests. I felt like I was being told to become a machine, and I still remember the despair. In this life, I never wanted to get pregnant. If I had a baby with such a person, the born child would be unhappy. So, I asked him if I could get a prescription for birth control pills. I understand. But, I've always had irregular periods. And I've been feeling unwell lately. I was thinking of getting a prescription for the pill, is that alright? Trying not to upset him, I cautiously told him, but he immediately showed disgust and yelled at me. Irregular periods. That's just your imagination. Women's menstrual pain is like a kind of feigned illness. It's all in your head. First of all, how will you pay for the clinic? You're not thinking of using the household money, are you? That's a joke. To use my income for such a feigned illness, you're such a beggar. If you want to visit the clinic, use your own money. Well, that is if you have any savings? I shed tears at his words, which made me doubt if he really was a doctor. He always said that he had no obligation to pay for my medical expenses. He called me a malingerer when I was immobilized by menstrual pain. Because of this, my savings rapidly decreased, and soon I couldn't even afford to visit the clinic. This means I could get pregnant. I must find a way not to have a child. As I spent my days anxiously, I overheard a conversation while Phil was drinking with his friends at home. Phil, aren't you going to have kids? Your wife is over 30, isn't she going to start asking for one soon? That's fine. I have azoospermia. I was thinking of adopting a child for inheritance. Hearing him laugh about this, I felt a deep sense of relief. Now I don't have to worry about having children. All I have to do is endure my mother's situation, and someday I will be free. That's what I thought, but why has it come to this? My plans had gone awry, and in a panic, I called Phil. When I told him about the pregnancy, he responded indifferently. You're pregnant? Well, it's fine. One more kid won't make it impossible to get by on my income. But I have no intention of taking care of the kid, so you do it. If it bothered me in any way, I will kick both of you out. That's absurd. And you said you had azoospermia. That? I just said that because I never used contraception and never got anyone pregnant before. I never actually had a test or anything, it was just my guess. But what's the problem? Is it bad that you're pregnant? You're a housewife, and we have enough for a comfortable life. So there shouldn't be any problem, right? Phil became suspicious due to my slip of the tongue. In a rush to cover it up, I told him I was just shocked that we conceived earlier than expected. And though he was suspicious, he didn't press me further. I regret not having seen a certificate from the hospital at that time. If only I had verified it with my own eyes. It's my oversight. All of this is because of my own naivety. Then Phil gave me an outrageous order. If it's a girl, I don't want her. A girl might end up being married off. And I refuse to let my inheritance go to some other man. What's needed for an heir is a boy. Make sure you give birth to a boy. If it's a girl, abort it, got it? I was speechless at his view of a child as nothing but a tool. If the child is a girl, she might not have to endure a life of suffering. She might be spared the hell that I've seen. Maybe it's better for the child not to be born than to come into a world of unhappiness. If I abort this child, maybe my anxiety will disappear. Such thoughts crossed my mind, and tears began to flow endlessly from my eyes. What a foolish thought. On the way back from the obstetrician, I cried openly. I sat on the sidewalk, sobbing, repeatedly apologizing while stroking my belly. People stared at me while walking by, but no one tried to speak to me. That was a relief. I just wanted to cry without caring about anyone else. I'm sorry, so sorry. I'm the worst mother for even thinking about your life like that. I apologized to the tiny life still in the egg state, crying until I felt like my tears would dry up. After a while, I calmed down and reconsidered what I really wanted for myself and my child. Whether the child is a boy or a girl, I want to give birth to this child. I want to protect my child no matter what. There's no fault in the life I've been given, and I've always loved children. If it weren't for this situation, I would definitely want to have this child. Plus, my mother might be happy. I've never done anything truly filial for her. Even when I was caring for her, she often apologized more than thanked me. I'm sorry, Courtney. I'm such a burden. I'm so sorry for being such a pitiful mother. Every time I heard her words, my heart ached. But it's different with a grandchild. It's not something that directly affects her. My mother, who loves children, might be happy to see her grandchild. Now, I've found reasons to want to give birth, realizing my own feelings. I promise, I'll protect you no matter what. I decided to give birth to the child in my belly and attempted to persuade Phil. But Phil's opinion was hard to change. If it's a boy, have it. If it's a girl, abort it. This unchanging mindset persisted as I reached the 15th week of pregnancy. As usual, Phil was adamant in his decision. So, I decided to announce my pregnancy during the New Year's greetings at Phil's parents' house as a strategy to gain his parents as allies. You're pregnant? That's wonderful news. Phil had planned to tell his parents after the baby's gender was determined. And the decision to give birth was final, so he had told me to keep quiet about it to his parents. However, I broke that instruction, spoiling Phil's plans. He forced a strained smile and gave a half-hearted response. Thank you, Dad. Well, she's not in a stable period, so we don't know what will happen. If the baby turned out to be a girl, I'd have to abort her. I wanted to prevent that at all costs. Sensing his transparent true intentions in his words, I immediately interrupted, continuing the conversation. But as a housewife, I have plenty of time to rest, so if all goes well, I think I can safely give birth. I might ask for help from you too. When the time comes, please support me. Honestly, I was trembling inside. I knew I would be scolded harshly when I got back. But even though I knew that, gaining my in-laws as allies might help me safely deliver the baby and protect this child. And if they didn't react negatively here, maybe I could ask for their help if something happened in the future. It was a huge gamble. While relieved by my father-in-law's positive reaction, I turned my gaze to my mother-in-law, the problematic one. Take care of yourself. My mother-in-law, Mary, was a strict and dignified woman. She always paid attention to her appearance, giving off the impression of a wealthy lady with her strict yet refined demeanor. Her response wasn't exactly positive. And considering the strict family background I knew about, I feared she wouldn't look favorably upon me until the baby's gender was known. I involuntarily bowed my head. Regardless of the baby's gender, let me know as soon as you find out. I want to go shopping for baby clothes together. As I was about to feel disheartened, these unexpected words reached me. And I looked up in surprise. Tears nearly escaped my eyes as I saw Mary's face. Instead of her usual stern expression, she looked at me warmly, like a true mother. Clearly happy about my pregnancy. Mary is not good at expressing her joy. She is really happy, even if it doesn't seem like it. My father-in-law, Bob, discreetly shared her feelings. Mary, hearing this, playfully scolded him, saying, "Oh, stop it." But their affectionate interaction filled me with warmth. I repeatedly bowed my head, thanking them, genuinely happy for the first time about my pregnancy. I received their phone numbers, with Mary saying I should contact her anytime if something came up, as she usually stayed home and had time to help. Until now, communication was through Phil. But since you're pregnant and shopping might be difficult, feel free to contact me anytime. I'm usually at home and can always help with such things. She offered me a coat, and seeing her kindness, I wondered if this could really be the same person who taught Phil that women should guard the home. I wanted to ask more, but Phil was closely monitoring the situation, so I couldn't get a chance. We left the in-laws' house that day. As expected, I received a thorough scolding from Phil when we got home. The moment the front door closed, he threw his shoes at me and lectured me for an hour while I sat on the floor in the living room. If I moved slightly due to numbness in my legs, he shouted even more, continuing until I couldn't stand properly due to the loss of sensation. Getting the in-laws on my side must have affected Phil greatly. He changed his mind, saying that regardless of the gender, I should give birth to the child. The moment I heard that, I mentally celebrated. From then on, I tried to take it easy, getting help from my in-laws and continuing my life. Their increased visits also meant restriction of action for Phil. Then, as I approached full-term pregnancy, if all went well, I was due to give birth in 2 weeks. I looked forward to meeting the baby, feeling excited about the approaching day. "Courtney, can you come here for a moment?" Against Phil's wishes, it turned out the baby was a girl. Still, he didn't insist on an abortion, so I thought everything would be okay. Then, I was summoned by Phil in front of the home sauna set up in our yard. Wondering what it was about, I went there to find him asking me to check for some insect-like thing inside. I really can't handle bugs. "Please, take care of it for me," he begged desperately, sounding pathetic. Whenever there was a bug in the house, he would call me instead of dealing with it himself. Coming from a rural background, it was no big deal for me. So I entered the sauna room, feeling somewhat exasperated. "Where did you see it?" "In the corner of the room?" As I searched for the bug and moved further into the room, suddenly, I heard the door slam shut. I quickly turned towards the entrance, only to see Phil's smirking face through the small window and heard the sound of the lock. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Open the door." "Shut up. Don't order me around." I panicked, realizing I was locked in. I pounded on the door, demanding to be let out, but Phil shouted back, intimidating me, and clicked his tongue in annoyance. "If you hadn't blabbed to my parents, I wouldn't have had to do this. You brought this on yourself. Reflect on your actions while you're in there for the next 3 days." "What are you planning to do? Where are you going?" I yelled with all my might at Phil, who was about to leave with the key still in the lock. He stopped, turned towards me, and smirked maliciously. "I don't need a damn kid. Since you ignored my feelings, you need some harsh punishment. I'm going to be away for 3 days. Reflect properly while you're locked in there." Terrified by his crude laughter, I realized the horror of his plan. To stay here for 3 days without food or water, and with a child in my belly? He probably hopes the child won't be born. I was speechless and despairing at Phil's unthinkable idea. Seeing my expression, he seemed to enjoy it, mockingly abandoning me and walking away. After a while, I heard the sound of Phil's car engine. He must have left the house. What should I do? My phone was inside the house, and even if I shouted, my voice wouldn't reach anyone in the neighboring houses. If only I could break the small window. Desperately looking around, I found a bucket of salt used for the sauna. If I break the window with this, I lifted the bucket and threw it with all my might at the small window. As expected, the window shattered easily, letting the outside noise into the room. However, the problem was the lack of any human presence. It was 9 p.m., and in this area with many elderly residents, everything was silent at this hour. Is anyone there? Please, someone help me. Anyone? I shouted desperately for help, but no one seemed to come. If it remained like this until morning, I would surely freeze. The outside temperature was near freezing in the dead of winter. And I was only in my loungewear, making it a true hellish situation. Breaking the window had let in the piercing cold air, and the temperature in the room plummeted. As I was overwhelmed with anxiety, wondering what would happen if no help arrived, that was when. Courtney, where are you? I heard a familiar voice from outside and peered out of the small window. Are you sure you heard Courtney's voice? Phil's car isn't here, maybe they went out together? No. I'm sure it was Courtney's voice. Something must have happened. Courtney. It's me. Where are you? Please answer me. Fortunately, my in-laws happened to visit our house that night to share some dinner leftovers. Using all the strength I had left, I raised my voice, barely audible, to shout to my in-laws that I was there. Hearing my voice, they immediately came to the sauna room. Seeing me locked inside, the color drained from their faces, and they hurriedly unlocked the sauna room's door. Luckily, our home sauna had a numerical lock, so I was able to tell my in-laws the code and they successfully unlocked it. Upon stepping outside, Mary quickly wrapped me in her coat and took me to their house. As all the doors of our home were locked, they welcomed me into their home since I couldn't return to mine. They provided me with warm clothes and drinks, and a servant immediately heated up the bath, allowing me to warm my chilled body and avoid any harm. Once I had calmed down, my in-laws approached me with concern and asked what had happened. I told them everything about the terrible treatment I had received from Phil, and what had occurred that day, sparing no details. Hearing my story, Bob was speechless. Mary trembled with anger and, coming to my side, hugged me tightly. Why didn't you rely on us sooner? How much you must have suffered. I'm so sorry, we should have noticed something was wrong with you too. Tears flowed from my eyes as I felt her loving, motherly anger and warmth. Bob looked at me with concern, biting his lip and bowing his head in apology. I can't forgive what our son has done. Where is he now? Do you know where he went? Her anger was evident, and she ordered her maid to immediately bring Phil back in front of me. The normally reserved servants were flustered by her stern tone and hurriedly set about their task. But I quickly stopped them in panic. Wait, please. Phil is probably with his mistress right now. What did you say? My shocking revelation made Mary's voice crack in surprise. Bob was also stunned, turning pale and looking at me in disbelief. I had discovered Phil's affair about a month ago. He would talk on the phone with a woman every night, and their disgustingly sweet conversations could be heard even from the next room. I had recorded these conversations for when we would divorce, and kept notes of the days he went out. I had confirmed the identity of his mistress through his phone and social media, and I saw that he had written about going out with her that day. Earlier, when I had calmed down, I checked and found that he was on a 3-day trip with his mistress. I cursed myself for marrying such a terrible man. And my in-laws knelt before me, apologizing while crying. We are truly sorry. You might not forgive us, but as his parents, we feel terribly sorry. We think we spoiled him too much. We are truly sorry. As they apologized with tears, I urged them to raise their faces. It's not your fault. But Mary, I can't let this go. I thought about calling the police, but that alone won't quell my anger. Agreeing with me, we devised a plan to teach Phil a lesson. 3 days later. Unaware of everything, Phil returned home. He came rushing into the garden with excitement. "Hey, how's it going in there? Did you learn your lesson? What's this?" Thinking I was still in the sauna, Phil approached with a smirk. However, he was shocked to see the small window of the sauna room broken, and the light inside turned off. He panicked, wondering how the light was turned off and why the window was broken. Rushing to check inside, he entered the sauna room. But the moment he did, the door shut and locked. "What?" Startled by the noise, Phil turned around to see me peering through the broken small window, greeting him with a beaming smile. "Welcome back, dear. Did you enjoy your little affair trip? Courtney, how did you escape from here?" "No, forget that, unlock the door. Let me out. You seem pretty confident. Did you take a good look inside the room?" "What do you mean?" The moment I told Phil these meaningful words, he seemed to notice something amiss inside the dark room. He strained his ears and looked around. "What's that noise?" Hearing a familiar rustling sound, Phil felt an eerie sense of dread. I couldn't help but smirk at his frightened face. "Well, who knows? If you're unsure of what it is, why don't I show you? Make friends with it." I covered the small window with an acrylic panel, and on my cue, my mother-in-law turned on the light inside the room. My father-in-law quickly secured the acrylic panel with an electric screwdriver. As the light illuminated the room, Phil let out a scream that echoed in the garden and collapsed.
Ah!
Spiders, spiders. The room was filled with numerous cellar spiders. Phil had a profound fear of insects, especially spiders. Just hearing the sound of their 6 legs moving made his skin crawl and filled him with horror. "No, no. Don't come near me. Courtney, what are you doing? Open the door, let me out. Don't come near me." Crying out pathetically, Phil begged for help. I looked down at him through the small window, grinning sarcastically. "Cellar spiders are great for eating those shiny black ones you hate, you know? They won't bite humans, so it's fine. Hope you guys get along. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way those shiny black ones are in here. Just open the door.
Ah!
It's coming this way. Please, stop. Don't come near me." Desperately resisting, Phil was frantically banging on the door and thrashing his legs. Surely, in this state, he would confess everything just to get out of the room. I interrogated him while looking down, asking about the events of the past 3 days and his mistress. "If you answer my questions honestly, I might let you out." What? I'll answer anything, just let me out."
Ah!
Even with the acrylic panel blocking the window, the noise was unbearable. If I had been outside, my eardrums might have burst. I questioned him thoroughly and made Phil spill everything directly. Due to his desperation to leave the room, he blurted out everything without thinking why he was being asked these questions. He also talked about his mistress. That's everything. I'm not hiding anything else. Well said. Was that enough to file a divorce? At my words, Phil turned his gaze in surprise. A man in a suit approached, introducing himself as my lawyer. "It's all right. We've got enough testimony now to win the divorce case." Phil, unable to grasp the situation, looked bewildered. I explained that the man was my personal lawyer named Ben, and he was visibly shocked. "What do you mean? Where did you get the money to hire a lawyer?" "We helped her. To protect Courtney from you." The last to appear were my in-laws. Seeing them, Phil lost his words in surprise. "Why are Mom and Dad here?" "We rescued Courtney the day you locked her up. That can't be. You've strayed too far from being a decent person. Someone like you is not needed in our family. We will take care of Courtney. We won't let you do as you please with her anymore. Phil finally seemed to understand that all his misdeeds were exposed. Already mentally cornered by the presence of spiders. This additional mental blow must have pushed him to the brink of despair. The color drained from his face, and he was completely lost for words. Thus, I succeeded in my revenge against Phil with the help of my in-laws. Despite his pleas to let him out, Phil spent the day in the sauna. The next morning, my father-in-law found Phil unconscious and foaming at the mouth. I was taken in by my in-laws, and all my belongings were retrieved by my Mary. The maids, aware of the situation, protected me from Phil. And I successfully divorced him without any further contact. Thanks to my in-laws, I found a new job and place to live. And my mother was taken into a different facility by my father-in-law. Afterward, Phil was disowned by his family. Rumors about the whole incident spread among the neighbors, affecting the management of his hospital. Reportedly, the hospital fell into a dire state. He was despised by the nursing staff, many of whom didn't want to work under such a disreputable person, leading to a wave of resignations. Soon after, I safely gave birth to my first child. 3 years after giving birth to my daughter, I now work at my mother's care facility while raising my child. My in-laws often visit and cherish their grandchild, allowing me to regain happy days.